So when y'all asked me to review Interview with Vampire, I had no idea what I was getting into. So this might end up being a very long video of analysis of me just going literally insane over these characters. Okay. Hey guys, how are you? It's your girl Deborah. I'm back. I'm not even gonna do my intro today because we have a lot to talk about. Okay, I am back. I apologize for this video being late. I asked you guys a while ago, you wanted me to review Interview with the Vampire, and at that time, episode 8 was about to come out like in a week, and I didn't know. But also, I got bronchitis. The ghetto girl, the ghetto. So I just thought to myself, let me wait until everything comes out and let me just do one long episode so that y'all can like relax, grab your water, grab your tea, grab everything you need to tune in with me, and then we can watch it together and like analyze everything together. Because as much as I do like making my short form videos, don't get me wrong, I do miss just like talking for a long time about something. Like your girl likes to yap, okay? I like to talk. So without further ado, y'all, this is going to be like an analysis, commentary, review, reaction, everything. Let's get into it. So let's start with episode 1. This was the beginning of season 2. Now, I actually have seen season 1. I started watching season 1, but I thought since you guys wanted a season 2 review more, I was like, right, like let me just do season 2 and then sprinkle my thoughts about season 1 like in between, right? So the first episode of season 1, we are in the war. Claudia and Louis have just killed Lestat. Well, we thought Louis had killed Lestat, and Claudia had asked to burn him, but Louis was like, no. And now we realize that Louis has left a way for Lestat to survive. And I honestly just think that in this moment, Louis is a sneaky little bitch for doing that, because Claudia, I just feel so bad for Claudia. And you guys will hear me say that a lot in this video. Like, Claudia really deserved better, to be honest. She didn't ask to be here. She really deserved better. And Louis doing that, like putting him in a coffin and when he knows that there'll be rats around him, was being a sneaky little bitch for that. And I really hated that. They head off to Europe during the war. They are fucking miserable and poor. Obviously, that makes sense because they're coming off of World War II. And I have to say in this moment, like, Claudia is very much pissed because here Louis is one more time just kind of like betraying the trust that like she has for him and choosing her second and choosing Lestat first, which is gonna be a common thing that we see throughout this whole entire show. But I honestly do understand why she's so pissed at him, and she doesn't really talk to him that much. Not to mention she's so focused on trying to find other people who are like her, because I think secretly like she's just very much done. There has to be more than Louis and Lestat. Like, I understand why she's looking for her tribe, like her personal people. But unfortunately, the world of vampires isn't really looking for little children who have been turned into vampires. And that's literally so sad for Claudia. But I understand her frustration and why she isn't even speaking to Louis right now. I have to say, especially in this episode now, the dynamics are going to change later. But I do have to say, when I was watching season 1, I definitely felt like, at least the way it was portrayed from Louis' point of view, that Lestat was like the narcissistic sort of father in the relationship and Louis was the enabler, codependent, and Claudia was just like the victim and she was the child. At least that's how it was and how it felt at episode 1, because we'd only gotten Louis' point of view. I was feeling bad for Claudia because she really is like the scapegoat of both of them, to be honest. Like, if you think about it, she is the one who, she was literally the bandage on a cracked relationship, the tool that is used whenever one other partner feels the other way about the other in the relationship. You know, she is used by Lestat to please Louis, and Louis goes off with her when he's done with Lestat. Like, Girlie was never really considered her own person, truly, on a deep level. So I understand why she's just so constantly trying to find her own type of people. I completely don't blame her. In the modern time, Daniel's conducting the interview and he's found out that the guy we called Rashid is actually Armand, which was such a funny little moment. And I think Daniel is actually shaping up to be one of my favorite characters in this whole entire show because he just keeps it so real and I love his sense of humor. Armand, previously known as Rashid, he's clearly trying to involve himself more in these interviews, and Daniel notices that and he's getting pissed off by that little by little. And it kind of feels in this moment that Armand is wanting to get interviewed either because he's feeling left out or something. I don't know what it is yet, but I do know that, like, I have it in my notes as well, that Armand was just clearly trying to involve himself more and more, and Daniel was really getting pissed by that. Not to mention, you could already feel this sort of tension between Armand and Daniel. Like, Daniel knows that something's up with this guy and it's just not being explained to us by the first episode, but I completely understand because Armand is clearly trying to portray this image of this like wise old ancient vampire, and it's like there's something more behind that, and we just just don't know what that necessarily is. But I understand why Armand is pissing Daniel off, because it's just so inauthentic. He's clearly trying to be something that he's not. And Daniel doesn't really like bullshitting around. Do you know what I mean? So I completely understand their little like tension in between both characters, and I thought that was interesting the way they portrayed that. And there's like little glimpses that they have a sort of history with one another. I mean, with Armand saying that Daniel was unworthy in San Francisco and now he's unworthy in Dubai, which makes you question what the fuck happened in San Francisco. It just shows you like Armand's little quips against Daniel, that he just considers him either less than him, like himself, Armand, or he just doesn't like him, and we don't necessarily know why. But I do think the seeds are being planted so well in the first episode. Some of the things I do like in this episode so far are like the little tidbits that they give us about vampire lore, like the fact that like when you drink somebody's blood, you can actually be affected by it. So for example, in Romania, like the blood, because the people are so miserable coming off of war, that the blood itself, when you drink it, also makes you miserable. Like that shit I love. I love vampire lore. Give me more of that. I really, really love that tidbit. Even though these are supposed to be like immortals and they consider themselves gods, even though they're not, but whatever. I just think like even they are not immune to like human emotion and sadness and things like that. I think that was such a nice touch. Louis and Claudia, like they also meet this English guy in the one of like the refugee camps, so to speak. And this isn't really important for the future, but again, it just shows you how like unsuccessful they are at lying sometimes when he pretends to be something that he's not, and the Englishman eventually finds out it's not your wife. Like it's just such a big foreshadowing to how they're gonna be when they go to Paris, because they really don't know how to get their stories together, and it's just such a fucking disaster. But anyways, Claudia is looking for other people, and she's researching a lot of like myths and legends to try and find another vampire like her, and she does kind of find something, that's for sure. She finds out that the people, not only are the people of Romania very superstitious of something, but also that there are these creatures that are vampire-like that are literally eating people. But the difference is that these creatures are fucking ugly. Let's start there. These creatures are not as beautiful as vampires, and they don't even look like they've received a gift. They look like zombies that can suck people's blood. We find out later who makes them, and it's this woman who, I didn't even catch her name, but she is a Romanian woman, and she is just a miserable lady coming after the war. And that's when Louis also explains to her that the blood is so miserable that it makes them miserable and they don't heal as fast, and etc., which also explains why she looks the way she looks. Girly Pop is not looking okay. But I guess Claudia is just kind of excited to see someone who looks like her. So they offer like maybe they can go back together, maybe they can all like, you know, be companions of one another or something. And the lady first of all agrees, and then she throws herself into the fire. At this moment, I'm just feeling bad for Claudia. Okay, because this is the second time that she has met somebody else and they have disappointed her greatly. Girly Pop has seen and been through enough. Also, it's fun to mention that in the modern interview, like there's this sort of quip with Real Rashid and Rashid, and it's funny that Daniel is always coming for Real Rashid every time Real Rashid pops up, which I just think is such a funny tidbit, and it's just such a Daniel thing to do. It's just so Daniel coded. I think he's just upset because he's just been lied to this whole time, so he's always taunting Real Rashid, who Real Rashid is just trying to live his normal life and do his job. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he's serving these rich vampires. He can be their meal at any single time, and sometimes he is. Like, Real Rashid just needs also a break. Do you know what I'm saying? Period. In the modern time, one thing that is very, very important here is that you can see in Claudia's diary that a few pages have been ripped out. And you start seeing the seeds of memory being tampered with. And it makes you wonder what is in Claudia's diary that has been ripped out that Louis doesn't want to be known, let alone to Armand. But even Louis himself doesn't remember what's in those pages. When Louis asks about it with Armand, they said that they had an agreement that he wouldn't read those pages anymore, which makes you wonder what is in those pages and what has been specifically taken out of Claudia's diary. I'm pretty sure Armand also doesn't want it rehashed because maybe it can cause a relationship problem, but it makes you very curious as to what is happening in that relationship, and also shows you like how many secrets, like how many layers of secrets these people have between one another, even though they're a literal relationship that has been going on for the last how many decades. Louis just asks for the pages for himself rather than to show Daniel, and even Armand is really frustrated about that, which again calls to question so much about what happened between all three of them, and there's clearly some history there. But also one thing that I really want to point out in their relationship, in this specific scene when they were both in bed together, is that Louis and Armand's relationship doesn't really feel like there's anything that's really passionate about it. Like, obviously if you've been with somebody for 70 years, like I don't expect, you know, hot fireworks or whatever, but their relationship kind of feels a little bit off. Like sometimes it feels like Armand is Louis's caretaker / like the person who just watches over Louis when he goes out of control or something. He's just constantly monitoring Louis, and like constantly just making sure like their relationship is on that perfect balance. I don't know how else to articulate my thoughts, but it just really comes off as that there's a lot of coldness and stillness, and instead of it being a loving relationship, it's a relationship that's based on control, and it only takes like tiny little things to make them unravel like that, which is really not a stable relationship, and it makes you question so much about what is happening between the both of them. As you guys will see, like I will make further commentary on it, but like I noticed that scene just really put me off. Like even when they kissed, like I was like, there's nothing here. It's not really giving me anything. It's not really giving me passion. It's not really giving like, oh, I love you eternally forever. It's kind of like, we're stuck together now and I'm taking care of you so you don't act insane, and this is old tea that we don't need to rehash. We have this perfect looking life. We live in this big ass penthouse in Dubai. Like I don't need any other issues coming into our relationship and fucking this up. Like get it together. That's what it kind of feels like. But anyway, towards the episode, Louis makes this speech to Claudia that it's always going to be him and her, which you know, and I know damn well it's never going to be like that, because Louis is literally a codependent in relationships, and that is something I will build on later in this video. But fuck him for saying that to Claudia and then literally everything that happened afterwards, okay, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Episode 2 rolls around. They're in Paris. Louis said something that was very, very interesting, and it's one of the reasons I truly love Daniel. Louis says that he was just really happy that he wasn't being discriminated against in Paris because of his skin color like he was in the US, which is pretty nice. But I also love how Daniel also makes a comment and says, okay, but your colleagues in like Algeria would beg to differ, because at this time, if I'm not mistaken, Algeria was fighting for its independence from France. I do think this points out sometimes that Louis in his own narration and his own story tends to be so like all about him and woe is me, and he has that kind of like whiny attitude sometimes where he hasn't learned to be also like self-conscious about how other people's perspectives might play into his story, or like other people are also going through other horrible shit. Now of course that does not negate the effects of slavery, but I do love how that is low-key pointed out. Like at this time as well, people were literally fighting for their country's independence, and girly pop, like it's not all about you. Even though yes, you're telling your story, there's other things that are happening at the same time, and I do love that Daniel kind of keeps him down to earth by saying that. There's this little petty note that Armand makes in this episode that I really want to point out, and when he says that him and Louis have been together for 77 years, and I think he said it's 32 years more than Louis had been with Lestat. Actually, hold on. Yeah, like 30 something years more than Lestat.
Together 77 years, Daniel.
47 more than he did with Lestat.
That's such a little petty thing, but I do think that's very important to note, like how even though Lestat is not in the picture anymore, it's like the both of them, because Lestat is both of their exes, they are constantly in their relationship trying to outrun Lestat, and even though they are companions to one another, they're still in their relationship trying to outrun Lestat and trying to outdo Lestat in a weird subconscious way, or they're at least repeating a similar cycle, like their personal relationship with Lestat, but they're also lying to themselves and telling themselves that, oh, it's not the same like it was with Lestat, when clearly, honey, you're just as equally as dysfunctional with or without Lestat, and you can't kind of live without him, because your relationships are so still centered around your experiences with Lestat, because the both of them don't want to talk about Lestat and how much like trauma they've both endured while being in relationships with him, and also trauma that they caused themselves, and because they don't want to talk about that, it just makes everything much more worse. Instead of them to just address it out in the open and discuss and be vulnerable at how this affected them, they would rather prefer be like, oh, we're doing much better than with Lestat. But you clearly know that you're not. You clearly know that you're not doing better than you were with Lestat, bestie. Let's not lie to ourselves like that. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm going crazy when saying that, but it really just feels like everything is low-key coming back to Lestat, whether you like it or not. So rather just get it over with. You're still obsessed with Lestat. Louis is still obsessed with Lestat. Everyone's still obsessed with Lestat. The sooner you get rid of it, the better. But anyways, he goes back to storytelling and they meet the Théâtre des Vampires or something like that. The Theater of Vampires, dude. I'm not French. I'm sorry. I do like the fact that the show does also mention how hard it is to like earn, like even though you're a vampire, Claudia still has to pickpocket to earn money. It's not like she just stumbles across magical money just because she's a vampire, or like you can compel someone to, like, you can't compel anyone in this world. So she has to resort to pickpocketing, which is kind of sad still, but I do like that it's realistic and it gives you an answer for a lot of those kinds of questions. So as they continue telling the story and they cut back to the modern time, Daniel is, again, what I say, like someone who keeps it real and is constantly asking all the right questions questions that make Armand uncomfortable and also make Louis uncomfortable. But as he's like literally flying too close to the sun with them, they sort of like gather together, become a tag team, and whenever he asks too many questions that make them uncomfortable, they kind of gaslight him and they get into his mind. They dig up his history in Paris with his previous ex-wife and how like his marriage failed, just to destabilize him so that he can't be too hot on their tails, which to me is funny because why would you ask someone to interview you then if you're not ready for these really deep questions? It's surprising to me that you're going to invite someone like Daniel who's going to ask you real hard questions and you're not going to want to confront those questions. You just want this like cute little fairy tale version of your story to be told out, but you don't want to face the realities of things. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm just like, Louis just loves to hear the sound of his own voice sometimes. And it's not like I'm a Louis hater. I actually do like Louis, but I also noticed that like he has this victim complex and he loves hearing his own voice, and I get so tired of it sometimes. So I love how Daniel keeps it real. In Paris, Louis is having a personality crisis and he's trying to find himself, and he becomes a photographer, which again speaks to how like Louis has low-key been codependent in a lot of his relationships, just always been attached to someone, especially after becoming a vampire, because beforehand he had so much going on at the same time and questioning his sexuality that like I don't think he really had the time to discern who he was. He was just trying to pretend so that he could make money for his family in New Orleans. Now that he doesn't have to do that anymore, and now that he's also like been forgotten by the most of his family, he doesn't know who he is outside of that. And in Paris you can see that like he's trying to be this like artisan person, Parisian photographer, and it's just like is that really who you are? But anyways, let me not question it. We've all gone through a personality crisis at a certain point or another. But one thing that does really disturb me is that Armand and Louis show Daniel like the different photos that Louis used to take. And when Daniel asks about who the people are, he was just like, some of them were just boys that they like to kill for sport.
Some are very old now, most are dead. And some we simply drained for sport. Well, generally me. Louis has his ways.
I'm so sorry, but there is, I can't shake that. I know the vampires are supposed to be biologically different and whatever, and they like have different ways of living, and they're not necessarily following human morality, but their own morality. But I'm so sorry. If we were to remove the fact that these men were vampires, the fact that they just hunt and killed the boys for sport and then they took photos of them is still weird as fuck to me. Like, I don't care if you're an ancient fucking creature, that's still weird behavior. And I hate how they like play that off as like, oh, it was just a cute little hobby I had, taking photos of hot guys and then killing them for sport later. Girl, what? Like, why are we excusing that? That's such weird ass behavior, and I don't understand. Like, it just gets played off as like a joke between the both of them. And I love Daniel's face when they say that to him. He's just like, what the hell is wrong with you two? And it's so weird. Girl, I'm sorry, I can't shake that one. I'm sorry. But anyways, what's important is that Claudia meets Madeline for the first time. And finally, we get Armand and Louis' like first ever meet cute eventually down this episode. And I honestly couldn't give a flying fuck about their meet cute, to be honest. Like, I was so over them because I just don't like, there's something off about their relationship at this very moment. And I just never really liked them like that. I never really, like with Lestat and Louis' meet cute, like, even though Lestat was literally following him like a sort of predator, I still was more intrigued than with Armand and with Louis because I don't really care like that. Like, I'm sorry. I don't really like them. But the show keeps it entertaining, keeps it interesting. It's just I don't like them as a couple. But eventually with the meet cute, they eventually meet the Théâtre des Vampires or whatever the fuck they call themselves. And there are a few red flags that I wanted to discuss here. First of all, we meet Santiago, right? And Santiago like has his little like monologue during the play, and I think eventually we find out that it is Armand who writes the plays and everyone acts in them. The monologue is about human beings and how they're detestable and yet he loves them at the same time.
Even as you disgust me.
I know that's completely random, but sometimes I do feel like Santiago has a lot of like hidden trauma, maybe when he was human, because, and this is something for a lot of vampires, they like to act as if they're more superior to human beings, and like they call human beings cattle, right? And to me, I'm like, haha kiki, but honestly, you guys were all human beings just like a few minutes ago in the show. Like, calm down. Do you know what I mean? This whole like, oh, they're gods. Y'all are not gods. You guys are a bunch of people who had like personal trauma issues, were in horrible positions, who were victims of a another vampire literally eating you. And now you're trying to supplement that by saying you have this gift so you don't feel miserable about your life. You're not God. I hate to break it to you. And it's something that like Santiago and like everyone in the theater like loves to say, but I'm really just like, you guys are literally people with so many fucking issues. You're all lonely. You don't know what to do with your lives now. You're not gods. Chill. Sorry, I just needed to say that. I needed to put that out there. But anyways, Santiago is a intrusive little bitch, and he's asking like 3,000 different questions from Louis and Claudia, and you can immediately see that like he has this sort of face of like intrigue, and they're very fascinating to him. But one of the reasons that they're also very fascinating to him is because Armand is fascinating to them. Armand finds Louis fascinating, and I think Santiago picks up on that, and he's like, okay, but why do you find these two fascinating, right? And he becomes very invasive and asks a lot of intrusive questions. And one of the moments you can clearly see that is when he asks Claudia who her maker is. And the reason that he says that is because, oh, Estelle makes like birth charts and whatever. In that split second when he says that, Estelle literally says, no, I actually don't need, and then he cuts her off. She was about to say that she doesn't actually need to know the maker to be able to form like a birth chart, whatever. But Santiago quickly hushes her up because he wants to know who created these people and who are they and why are they so special to Armand. That should have been like the first fucking clue. It's just surprising to me that no one caught up on that, even though these people are supposed to be vampires and they're supposed to be using their fucking intellect. Like, you should have been able to pick up that Santiago is literally trying to find who the fuck are you and his intentions. But that's a little bit inconsistent here, because I don't know, like, the question I would have is, why is this guy asking me 3,000 different questions? And Claudia later says that she listened to all of their thoughts, and all of their thoughts were saying that like, oh, I want to lick you. But girl, did you not pick up on Santiago's vibes and how like he doesn't or is very suspicious of you? No, because I did, and I'm watching the show. She sees the photo of Lestat in the corner and she asks who that is, and we find out that Lestat is actually one of the reasons that the Theater of Vampires came to be in the first place. And I just want to call out the scene because Daniel starts playing music from The Young and the Restless, which I used to watch The Young and the Restless when I was a little girl, and the fact that he started playing that theme song just to show how much of a dramatic soap opera this whole entire thing is was crazy. It was amazing. I loved it. Armand does confess like he's been very sexually involved with everybody in the theater. Like, they've all been sexually involved with one another at a certain point.
I fucked Santiago too, and Celeste and Estelle. Even had an aerobic evening with Tuan and Quang Pham in the back row of a cinema watching Now Voyager.
Did you?
And I do think it's one of the reasons that Santiago's interest was also piqued, because you can imagine, like, I do think that there must be a little bit of jealousy in there, because you've like been intimate with this person, you all have been intimate with this person, yet you have this like master sub relationship with him where you call him maître and you're like his subservience, and you follow this guy's rules and you do whatever and you live according to his great laws. And then there's these random people that just come up and he's not giving the same treatment to them, or what makes him so special. And especially as somebody who's like Santiago, who loves like the spotlight, who loves, you know, being the center of attention, and now he's not necessarily the center of attention for this very moment, especially from Armand. I do definitely think that there's something there where there's maybe also a little bit of jealousy, and why there's so much friction at the beginning. Like, if the both of them were not interesting people to Armand that much, I don't think Santiago would have cared enough. And of course there's more events that like build up the issues, but I really feel like Santiago must have also been feeling that just like a little bit. Louis and Claudia argue about this, and Claudia wants to stay in Paris, which is really one of the worst decisions Girly Pop has ever made. I really wish she would have taken herself and she would have left. I understood that she was desperate to find people who were like her, and they are very alluring. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand they're very alluring. They have like this huge otherworldly presence and they embrace being vampires. But honey, you could have taken some of the lessons and gone to another place. But she didn't. And Louis just wants to make her happy, so they stay in Paris. And it is such a fucking mess. Also, in the modern world, another thing that is happening is that Daniel is having these flashbacks. Well, like flashbacks to Armand, which gives us a clue as to him and Armand have seen each other somewhere else before, but we don't necessarily know what's happening, and it's really fucking with Daniel's mind. But in episode 3, that becomes all clear. Also, if my lighting is ass, please do forgive me. It is literally almost 6 p.m. and the weather outside is bipolar. But let's continue. So this intelligence officer called Raglan James, or RJ, comes to meet Daniel while he's having like dinner, basically. And he might be like so like intelligence, like MI6, God knows what. And he practically asks Daniel to start asking specific questions and to help their organization out. Now, This is the point where I was just like, first of all, where are they taking this? Because this guy says that like he's Daniel is not the only person to have interviewed Louis and Armand, and like he's one of the he's one of the few multiple people, and all of them have either been undead or dead. And also that's just such a big red flag, and just ties into my theory about how much Louis loves to hear about himself. I'm sorry, but that's just my personal opinion, okay? He also mentions that they're tracking down up to this point 1,600 or 1,300 vampires or something. And my question is, what are you gonna do when you find these vampires out? Like, you can't kill them, so what you gonna do? I'm very excited, and I think the show has been renewed for a 3rd season, so I'm very excited to see how this plays out. But the one thing I do see with Daniel here is that, and this is my personal opinion, that Daniel is actually Louis' closest thing to having a friend in this whole entire show. Let me explain. So in this moment, Daniel refuses to sell out Louis and the whole entire interview basically. And he actually starts like shouting at everyone, telling him that this is an intelligence officer. He obviously does this for A, his own safety, but also B, I do find it interesting that even though they like do give him the documents eventually and they, you know, find out more information, and they also hack into his laptop, he doesn't sell them out. He wants to know the story. He cares about the journalism of it. By being extremely honest with Louis and calling him out on his little moments, I do feel he's being more of a friend than Armand ever was, because Armand was just feeding into his like idea of what possibly happened to try and preserve his relationship. But Daniel really keeps it real with Louis, and I really feel like that is closer to friend behavior. And towards the season finale, I'll explain my point more, but I do see like Daniel has been more of a friend to Louis than a lot of people have in his like whole entire vampirehood, so to speak. And I feel like that gets really, really underlooked, and that's just my personal theory. But the fact that he didn't completely sell him out immediately shows that he does have not only common sense to survive, but also recognize that this is not what he's really here for. What he cares about is the story and the person he's interviewing, gets to know Louis on a more personal level, and also make sure that Louis questions things that he thinks are real. And no one really does that for Louis. Everyone just like sort of leaves him in Delulu land, and Daniel doesn't do that, which I really, really respect. Instantly, within a few seconds, we get more conflict between Armand and Daniel once again. And you see this conflict immediately because Daniel is just not buying this shtick that Armand has for vampires and vampire biology. Like, he's just like, no, you guys are still killing people. Like, I love how he doesn't buy into the bullshit that Armand is trying to sell him by trying to see him as this like ancient vampire that's really mystical and understands human morality versus vampire morality, and is there such morality in the first place because it was created by humans? Fuck that shit, okay? Daniel doesn't give a flying fuck, and I really, really respect that. We find out how Armand knew Lestat. He led this coven called the Children of Darkness, and this was during like medieval times where they were also vampires, but they lived completely different lives, and they were more ashamed. Armand created these rules, these like great laws that these people couldn't break, and so they lived in like shame, and they lived in like a cave, and they looked horrible. And Lestat was around that area at the time, and Armand was just so fascinated about how Lestat was living his own life and living on his own terms and not being controlled by anyone. And Armand wanted Lestat under his own control. I want to just put that sentence out there. Armand wanted to control Lestat, because by Lestat being there and being himself, he was a threat to Armand's control, his iron fist that he's had on these vampires for such a long time. And again, it just shows you, and this is something I'm going to say throughout this video, Armand is a controlling little bitch, and I really don't like him. I'm sorry, I really don't. I understand his backstory is truly horrible, and I do feel sympathy for him, but at the same time, he is so focused on control a lot of the times in the show. Like, he loves control, and anything that's out of his control makes him super insecure. He loves controlling his environment, the people around him, the people in relationships with him, and Lestat is the one person that he couldn't control, but he really, really tried to. When Lestat meets the rest of the coven, he shows them another way of living, which is not the same. And there's a specific sentence that one of the vampiresses says, and she meets Lestat. She says that we're supposed to serve God through Armand, like we're supposed to, or something, like we're supposed to serve God through Armand. And that just tells you, like, he's also creating a cult. He's creating a cult where he can be like the overhead figure, the Jesus figure, and really, sweetie, it's not giving what it's supposed to give. Sorry, you will never be that bitch. And that's just the truth. In my personal opinion, the fact that he's just constantly always trying to put himself at the top of the hierarchy, not only is he imposing rules on other people, but he also has the audacity to tell people that he's so close to God that they can serve God through him. It's so tapped to me And I really don't like Armand because of that. I also really respect Lestat for standing his ground on that, because if that was me as well, like I would never want to be in a coven with someone like that, or want to be in a group with someone like that. Eventually the Children of Darkness, like they throw themselves into the fire because they just cannot handle living a new way of life like Lestat is. Well, Lestat goes into a relationship with Armand, but he doesn't really love Armand, even though he says he loves Armand. But you know that I know that he does not love Armand like that. He just wants to gain something from Armand, which is a little, like, that's very mean and that's very manipulative. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't want to be around Armand either. But eventually, after Lestat gets what he wants, he abandons the Théâtre des Vampires. Well, he doesn't actually abandon them. Hold on. He leaves them and he doesn't want to be a part of them anymore, but he literally leaves money so that they can always have a theater show. The fact that he still leaves them money shows you that he still definitely cares for the establishment that what he's created, but he's not interested in being the fucking leader of a cult, okay? He just wanted you to enjoy the show and to be happy with being a vampire. But Armand is the one who really wants control over everyone and everything. And I really respect Lestat for doing that, for just like recognizing, listen, I like you guys, but I don't want to actually live with y'all forever. And I really like and respect that. And so that's what basically happened with Armand and Lestat's backstory. Back to the actual interview itself. Claudia is now trying to be an initiate in Théâtre des Vampires. I don't know why I keep on trying to say it in French as if I know how to fucking pronounce it in French, babes. It's Theater of Vampires, okay? I don't know why. Again, there has been 3,000 different red flags she should have ignored. Claudia wants to join them anyways, and Louis has no choice but to just support Claudia, even though this is a literal burning, terrible, horrible idea. But I digress. So they have to come up with more lies, obviously, to fulfill their story, which is just a horrible idea. And I don't understand how Claudia could look at herself and really think like, right, like I'm so smart to lie enough that these people will have no idea for the next like hundreds of decades who my maker was. Like, girl. Okay, I would never have that much confidence. I would just lie and then leave the country. Like, Claudia is now being hazed into the group. And again, we're going to go back to Armand's love for control because he hazes her. I really hate anything to do with hazing. I hate anything to do with organizations that really feel like degrading you is the best way to let you in into something. Fuck that. I really despise it from a personal level. So when Claudia like has to like be a puce or whatever, fuck that shit. That shit's horrible to me. It just feeds more into Armand's idea of control, even though he's literally dating Louis and Claudia is his daughter. Like, I can't fucking stand Armand. I'm sorry. I wish I could be more fair, but I really can't stand him. Like, I just... Ugh. But anyways, we find out more about Santiago, the little lurking demon, the little lurking snake that he is. And we find out more about his maker, that I think he was made with his, like, from his maker without Armand's permission. So Armand, like, kills him. And now he's in, like, a cryptid tomb or whatever. But Santiago doesn't really seem too pissed about it, at least for now. But it just shows you again why does Armand literally feel like he's so important enough that you can't turn a vampire without my fucking permission. Anyways, Santiago asks Claudia more questions about her maker, and I don't know how she even feels comfortable opening her mouth to saying anything to Santiago because he gives me the fucking creeps. Whatever. He's just trying to find out more information from her, and so he asks her, like, what is one of the gifts that your maker imparted on you? And she was like, to lie really well. And Santiago was like, keep trying. Like, girl, should that not warn you? Should that not warn you that this man does not believe her lie? But anyways, in this also same episode, Claudia finally opens up what happened to her and Bruce and just how horrible it was. Sometimes when I look at Claudia and everything that she's been through, like how she doesn't want to be here. She was literally a band-aid child to a horrible failing relationship. When she recounts it, my heart really breaks for Claudia, and I just want better for her, and it's just fucking horrible. In the same episode, Louis is having more hallucinations of Lestat, so much so that he actually ends up hurting somebody else that's not Lestat, and so that immediately calls attention to all of the vampires, and Santiago tells Armand telepathically, you need to kill this man. This man needs to go. And Armand is supposed to do it, and then he doesn't do it because he loves Louis. Yeah. See, this is my problem with Armand and his whole little like dumbass system. It's really all fun and games when you're powerful and you make a rule for other people, but when that rule comes to bite you in the ass, it's not as fun, is it? It reminds me of Mean Girls with Regina George, and she made all those rules for people, and then when it finally hit her in the ass, like she would just bend the rules whenever she wanted to, and then everybody else would have resentment towards her because they had followed the rules diligently. I personally feel like Armand should have had a system where if they don't want more people in the coven creating vampires, then they should have a more democratic system where they could all vote. Or if you know you need to kill somebody, then you should have a rule in your coven where another person who does not have a conflict of interest would be responsible for killing off that vampire. Because now it's biting him in the ass. Look at us. Who would have thought? It's just really stupid, and it's again a fatal flaw of Armand's, but no, he loves power, he loves to be in charge, and look what he's dug himself into. Guys, it's day 2. Do we like this fit? I like this fit. I think it's giving artsy casual, babe. Do you know what I mean? I sometimes just want to show that I'm more than a torso in my videos, you know? I just wanted to give you guys a little fit check. Slay. Anyway, let's continue. Okay, so Claudia is finally, she's finally done her initiation. First thing is that she is subjected to basically just playing a child constantly in every single play. And mind you, this is the thing that Claudia has been trying to run away from all of her life. And it's literally something that she cannot help because she is technically in the body of a child, but she is an old woman in a child's body. And the worst part is that Armand is the one who, if I'm not mistaken, is writing all of these plays. So Armand is the one who's actually subjecting Claudia through all of this, and he knows what he's doing, by the way. He's the one who's subjecting Claudia to literally everything. And again, one more point why I don't like Armand. My personal opinion, I just think that Armand knows what he's doing, and he's doing it as a little bit of a form of humiliation, where he knows that Claudia cannot fight back, cannot do anything. Even though he's literally sleeping with Louis, her dad / brother in this scenario. That's a crazy sentence. He's willingly humiliating her, just showing that his affections he doesn't care for Claudia like that. And the fact that she's literally so done with this play, even though she wanted to be part of the theater, and she literally asks can I please do something else? And what does he do? He shames her, and then he makes her wear the outfit constantly, and then Louis can't do anything about it. Send help! I'm so tired. And this is exactly what I mean. Louis is such a fucking codependent when he is in love with somebody that he's not using all logical reason. This is somebody you're supposed to be responsible for. Yes, she joined the theater on her own, but you can't just sit there and be meanwhile you're shagging the boss. Hello? I'm sorry, that's supposed to be your child. You're supposed to care. Some people can argue that listen, it was Claudia's fault. She was the one who wanted to join the theater. She was the one who, if Louis wasn't there, she would still be subject to that kind of treatment. But I don't know, I just didn't like Louis' reaction to that. I don't know, maybe I'm just being sensitive. Anyways, very important scene happens where Claudia is caught writing in her diary, and Santiago, out of all fucking people, finds her, and she's like, oh, I'm not breaking a law, this is not keeping a history, this is just writing down my thoughts, which is not the same thing. And Santiago admits and says that he's also broken a few of the great laws, which again, fucking hypocrites in this whole entire coven. He says that he's just been more discreet, but if Estelle and anybody else found it, she would be defo gone and defo dead in that moment. But the fact is all of these people are fucking hypocrites. So when we have the final episode and they're literally putting Claudia on trial just for killing Lestat, y'all deserve jail. Oh, so sorry. In this moment, Santiago is very sneaky, but he's also trying to pretend to be this great guidance to Claudia, even though he knows damn well what he's doing. And when he says that he already read what Claudia said about him, girl, that would put me on so much edge, because he's already read so much in the diary. What else does he probably know in his head? And that's what I mean. It's these little things that Santiago is using, and he's just pretending to be a nice person to Claudia. But you can see in these moments how he was smart enough to start putting 2 and 2 together. He's a sneaky little bastard, and that's how he is. Anyways, things come to an head when they're at the sort of dinner. So they're all sitting there together. Louis is going off and on about all the new things that Paris has to offer in terms of creativity, artists, poets, and whatever. And the thing is that makes me laugh is that the vampires resent him for just exploring and not having to be part of the Théâtre des Vampires, but then at the same time y'all are at a party full of human beings. Sometimes I do get a little bit confused. Maybe they were all vampires and I just wasn't paying attention, but they really start to resent him and how much he cares about humanity. I guess that really rubs him the wrong way. He also says what does Armand see in Louis? And knowing that they've all been intimate with one another, knowing that they all have history, I defo feel Santiago is jealous of Louis in some shape or form, whether he's resentful about all the laws that Louis has broken, or the fact that they're not he doesn't have to be part of the Théâtre des Vampires, but they all had to go through this harsh initiation. I just think that he's really jealous of Louis in this moment. In this moment, you can really tell that he's just so resentful of Louis, but Louis is so oblivious. And Santiago is so fucking resentful of Louis to the point where he starts mocking his words, and it pisses off Louis. And then they have a conversation, and then Louis is about to pull out his tongue. In my personal opinion, he should have pulled it out. but it would have caused drama, so I guess not. That scene was so tense, and I really feel that was a scene where like Santiago has already just been tolerating all the bullshit he's been seeing, but after Louis kind of humiliated him in front of like Estelle and everybody else at the table, where he's like, you know, the performer, he loves being the center of attention, like I think that in that moment, that is when he snapped and he was like, oh, you think you can threaten me and have your boyfriend watch? Fuck you, I'm gonna destroy you. And ever since then, his plan to find out who Louis and Claudia's makers are goes to a full 100. He goes like full vengeful mode. I think it's that moment where Armand's power also gets questioned, and it's just kind of like Louis is just coming here and he's not following the rules. Who does he think he is? And now he has the audacity to pull out my tongue. I'm going to destroy him. And I think that's definitely like the mindset. Like, I definitely see the little seeds that have been planted with Santiago. Anyways, let's get back to the main plot. Another thing that happens here is that they skip to the like, you know, modern times, and Daniel is going through the photos and he's like, oh, but these actually aren't bad. Like, these are really pretty. And then Louis looks at the photos and he's like, half of these aren't even mine. And then he looks at Armand and he was like, did you put these in here? And Armand is like, no, but we all know that you're fucking lying, Armand. Why are you lying like this? This is what I'm talking about. Like, Armand this whole time has just been manipulating things behind the scenes to make Louis feel comfortable, to the point where he's actually lying about his fucking portfolio, and only God knows what he's been manipulating like behind the scenes. I'm so excited to talk about the final 2 episodes, but let me keep my mouth shut for now, period. After that, you can see like Louis also is starting to distrust Armand. Like, why the fuck would you do that? Like, that just makes me feel worse about myself. And Armand is just like, oh, lol, I don't know anything about that. Like, it's either it is Armand or something sketchier happened, or Louis does not remember because he's missing gaps in his memory. But my theory is that it's Armand. Armand literally takes Claudia and he shoves her to the wall after she goes to visit Madeline, and she just tries to make a friend, which again, fuck Armand. Anyway, so he puts her to the wall and he threatens her and he tells her like he can't see her anymore. By the way, Santiago is behind that wall, fucking hell, listening to the whole conversation, and Armand reveals that he knows their maker, and he knows that like what happened to Claudia and Louis and how they killed Lestat. And it's just like when Claudia was also surprised, I was angry for Claudia, because you cannot imagine this whole time you think you trust this person, you do have the secret, and then he goes and blab mouths to his fucking lover. And so when they have that confrontation between Claudia and Louis and they're screaming at one another, and she said, what happened about me and you and me? Like, girl, there was no you and him. It was Louis and his next soon to be lover, baby. I'm so sorry. And when she gets super frustrated about it, I completely fucking understand. Like, Claudia has always been looking out for Louis, like she's always cared about him, and he betrays her once fucking again. And it also shows you that Armand does not give a flying fuck about Claudia. Like, he doesn't give a flying fuck, and she's the only obstacle between him and Louis fully being together. But then also, after he finds out that Santiago was listening to the whole time, he also threatens Santiago. But in this moment, like, he tells Santiago to know his place, but you can clearly feel that like Armand, his power is slipping and everything's becoming so messy. And I feel like he knows it, and Santiago knows it, like everybody knows it, that everything's just so messy right now. Everything's just so messy, and you can feel Armand's power is low-key slipping, but he doesn't want to admit it to himself. Like, the fact that Santiago's already sneaking out to different places, like, he never used to do that before, and it's really coming all to a head, and he's losing all his composure, especially. I really like the fact that Claudia called Louis out and how stupid he acts when he's loved, because when she tells him, like, he threatened me, and Louis like, oh, he would never do that. It's giving that kind of dynamic with Louis, where Louis has just been so, like, he's so codependent and he's so stupid in love, and he wears these rose-colored glasses that even the person who's being literally abused and humiliated under him, like, he just can't see it. He can't see the person who's manipulating him as the way he is. It takes so much. It took 70 something years to see who Armand truly is, and it's so frustrating. Louis, I can't deal with this man anymore. So episode 5 pops out and things are switched up with Daniel. Daniel up until this time has been remembering like all these flashing moments and like all these memories from a certain time, and he's been seeing Armand, but then like he finally asks the right questions after receiving an audio from the like RJ person, right? And this is the moment where things really start changing in the show, and things like start kicking up for me, because before it was just like petty love story shit. Now it's like, oh, Daniel's involved in this too. Amazing. So we find out that, first of all, the San Francisco meeting that they all had was actually much more turbulent than we thought. Louis attacked Daniel after Daniel like told him like, oh, but you don't recognize the gift. And listen, I personally think that Daniel was being, of course, like a 20-something-year-old as he was, but I do love that Daniel calls out the privilege that Louis had. Like, yes, being a vampire can suck, but at the same time, you got to live all these experiences, you've gotten all this money, and as a human being who's struggling and is on drugs, like, you can imagine that sounds so amazing to someone. Like, it's not the logical decision, but that sounds amazing to someone in that kind of moment who's just looking to be something. But I really hate how Louis, like, attacked Daniel, but we find out anyway that Armand is the one who saved Daniel from literally being killed by Louis. And not to mention, he is like maybe the 128th person who has gone through this with the both of them. What? Like, I feel like that just gets so glossed over. How fucking weird is it that you guys constantly have these people interviewing you and you just kill them after a certain point? Like, I get it, they're vampires, they live by different rules, but honestly, fuck the both of you, okay? Like, I keep on throwing my middle finger to the fucking video as if I'm flipping you guys off. I'm not. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm so mad. Anyhow, San Francisco was a fucking disaster. And then we get the grand final confrontation between Louis and Armand where they say what they want to say. And it is the most explosive, like, detrimental thing to their relationship. And it's honestly just fucking horrible to hear. But you know what? It's necessary because y'all both need help, okay? And Louis calls Armand boring. Armand finally calls out Louis on his woe is me mentality, which I like, but then at the same time Louis throws Armand's trauma of being a literal slave back in his face, and that's when I was like, okay, fuck you for saying that. That's also horrible. But they're finally saying the things that they want to say to one another, and I will say, I just think that Louis is never going to be over Lestat, at least at this certain point, right? Because he's still hung up on everything that he went through with Lestat. And so is Armand, but in a different way because he was betrayed by Lestat. And I really feel like Louis doesn't feel that Armand is the same as Lestat. Like, I feel like he is the rebound, right? Like, but Lestat will never be Armand and Armand will never be Lestat. And I feel like because he had so much of like this intense, overwhelming experience with Lestat, he's trying to recreate that same thing with Armand. That's why he's going to find different boys to tell his story. He wants this sort of grand story moment. That's why he's taking on like a dominant position in their relationship sometimes. That's why they call each other sometimes maître. Like, there's a scene in the same episode where Louis tells Armand not to kill Daniel, and he replies, he says like, is that what you want, maître, like master? And that taps into the whole like master slave thing that Armand has been through, not to mention the sexual assault and abuse that he's been through, but also this type of relationship that like Louis has been through with Lestat. Like, it's so disturbing how their past trauma just bleeds into their whole entire relationship, and like the both of them are just sort of indulging in it, but then it's destroying them, but then they're indulging in it. And the truth is, like, Armand, even though I really dislike him, isn't really boring. It's just Louis is just trying to recreate his relationship with Lestat with Armand, and it's not working, and it'll never be the same. Instead of for them to admit it to one another that they're both sort of rebounding after Lestat, like, they don't, and they're just very much in their ego, and they just destroy everything outside of one another. But those are my thoughts during their whole entire fight. I just feel bad for Daniel. But anyways, I just feel really bad for Daniel because he's literally a victim in this whole entire situation. Like, he is the plaything that is getting thrown between both of these characters, and he did not ask for this. Like, he just wanted an interview with a fucking cool vampire. But yeah, Daniel's a practical victim. Not to mention, Louis tries to commit suicide by going into the sun, which is really just heartbreaking. And then when Armand, like, this is how their relationship is so close to and connected to Lestat that Armand knows that he won't listen to him, but he has to call back Lestat. Like, girl. And Lestat is trying to say I love you, and Armand just can't say it because it's also hurtful for him. Like, please just save us the time and the trauma and separate. I beg of you, please. Let's move on to episode 6. So we're coming off of all the trauma of episode 5 and both characters, Louis and Daniel, remembering, and Armand is definitely suspicioso. He knows that something's up between the both of them, and the united front that he tried to pass off with Louis is not looking very united anymore. But we get some closure about Madeline and Claudia, and of course Claudia goes back to Madeline, which I love, and she asks for Madeline to be turned. Half of this episode irritated me because Armand literally made this huge entire deal because no vampire can be turned without Armand, but he hasn't even turned anyone himself. Like, who does this man think he is? So Louis ends up turning Madeline, and the only thing I'm really happy for Claudia here is just like seeing how Madeline thinks of Claudia and how she sees her as someone that's really beautiful, and that's what Claudia really deserves after all this time. Like, girl, like, I'm crying. And then like when her and Madeline and Armand and Louis are like having dinner at the cafe, and Madeline and Claudia look so happy, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I knew it was never gonna last. You know what? Because that bitch Armand sold out everyone, including his own boyfriend. Yep. Yeah, he did. Episode 7, the great trial happens. Listen up. This episode had me in shambles. Okay. So we're not even going to talk about the fact that they literally slashed everybody's ankles, which was horrible to have to see. Like, oh, I can't normalize that shit's weird. So Lestat comes back, okay, in this episode. I was shookity shook, I was shakety shaking, I was shaking, quaking in my boots when Lestat came back, because I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be real. And of course, in Lestat fashion, he is the most like extravagant, like he's just doing the most. Santiago is in charge of this fucking trial, and Armand is kept at the back, or so we think. Lestat recounts things from his perspective, and at the beginning he's defo lying. Like, he tries to dramatize Louis as the aggressor, as the predator, that he was the one who came after him, which we know is a fucking lie. But we also know that this whole entire thing has been scripted, so he's also following the script that others have gave him, so he also knows that's not the fucking truth. But then we get something that really does hit us and make us question Louis, and that is when it comes to Claudia being turned. So Lestat recounts the actual events when Claudia was being turned. Now again, season 1 gave this dynamic of Lestat is the one who chased after Louis. Lestat is the aggressor, and he was the problematic one in the relationship. Lestat cheated, and Lestat is the problematic bitch that tried to throw his lover from literally space down into fucking back earth, and then they had to accept Lestat back into the fold, and then he was still seeing Antoinette, and then Lestat needed to be killed, okay? And Lestat didn't care for Claudia at all. But now we realize that actually, yes, Lestat was still the aggressor. Don't get it twisted. I still give him the bombastic side eye for literally everything. But it seems here that Louis, when Claudia was about to be turned, Lestat actually explained a lot to him about how like the great laws work, and also that you can't be turning children, what's going to happen to her body. And Louis, with his inability to think straight, to act rational, and with his woe is me mentality, literally begs Lestat to turn Claudia. Like, and not only that, he taps into his lover's like insecurity and trauma, and like he taps into the whole, like, you know how Lestat is really afraid to be alone, and that's his biggest insecurity, and he taps into that, and he's like, I'll be with you forever, just give me this child, like give me this bandage so we can fix this broken relationship. And why? All because Claudia called him an angel. And because previously in these episodes Louis has been slowly turning into an unreliable narrator, with him forgetting convenient details or forgetting simple things, when he finally admits that Lestat's versions are true, I was so shook. I said, Louis. So Louis, for once, he is not painted into the victim light that he always likes to take. Like, he knew what he was doing when Claudia was turned. He knew exactly what he was onto, and Lestat warned him. And also another important scene that was completely like different in season 1 is the like fight scene before Lestat threw him out of the sky, right? And this is exactly what I mean. Like, Louis has always been painting this picture like Lestat as the aggressor, Lestat has been the problem, but also Louis is also a little bit of an aggressor in his relationships as well. And we finally see how Louis was threatening Lestat. He was egging him on. Lestat was like, I don't want to fight about it like this, and he would slam Lestat's head into the piano. Don't get me wrong, Lestat is insane, okay? But like I said previously earlier in this video, it really felt like Lestat was just the abusive aggressor and Louis and Claudia were the victims. But now you can see that they were both wrong and they were both problematic, but definitely it gives a different light to Louis, and he really didn't need to be saying all that to Lestat. Like, and it's also interesting how like these two men still don't know how to heal their trauma and find healthier ways to have relationships, and to resolve their issues resort to violence, which is something we'll see with Louis and Armand again in the final episode, which is why I say like Louis is also a bit of an aggressor on his own. But anyways, we see that other point of view, and this whole time Claudia has also, because Claudia didn't really see or understand what the fuck was going on, and Louis had the audacity to be like, don't worry Claudia, like it's fine, like to pretend that he's the fucking victim as if he wasn't throwing Lestat around. The real victim in this situation is Claudia, because she believed like Louis was the one who was beat up, not really recognizing just how much like Louis was such an aggressor in this fight. But it was also still wrong for Lestat to literally throw him down from the sky. Both of them are problematic, and Claudia is the victim, and she was just really like, her emotional heartstrings were really pulled and tugged, and she just wanted a stable home. But anyways, in this episode, Claudia the victim and Madeline are sent to burn, and truly, y'all, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was sad. And you can finally see Lestat caring about Claudia on his his face, but for me it was like too little too late. I know some people said that in the books Lestat actually cares more for Claudia than it is on the show, and I really wish to have seen that because then it would have been more impactful as a scene. But like it really felt that no one cared for Claudia here. Claudia was just like, she was just the after product of all the fuckery everyone was going through, and I just feel so bad for Girly Pop, like, you know, and her and Madeline too, who was just a new vampire. Like episode 8 comes along, but you see at this time the image that's been painted here is Armand had to sell everybody out because he would die. He's been making it seem like, oh yeah, like I was the one who saved Louis, I was the one who chose banishment for him, you know, but that's a fucking lie, as we find out later in this episode. And so Louis is basically like sent to a tomb, and he's not desecrated, but he's very like buried alive basically, but Armand is the one to like let him go out of the tomb or out of the crypt or whatever. And he goes, like, he hallucinates obviously because my guy has literally been in there for God knows how long, and when he hallucinates, like, he's just in vengeance mode and he just wants vengeance for Claudia. Anyways, he goes into vengeance mode and he's ready to kill everyone. And I will say I love how he just burns everyone alive. Slay. This is the one decision that Louis has made that I'm very much in agreement with in slay. Let's talk about that Santiago versus Louis scene when Santiago not only talks about everything, but he also talks about using Claudia's ashes to not only use his makeup but then to also pleasure himself. I don't know if he actually did that. Fuck Santiago for saying that. Claudia has just been a victim of sexual assault this whole entire show, and for him to say that, to add that extra layer of fucking perversion, like, because she's a girl, like, fuck Santiago. Oh, I was so happy when Louis beheaded him. Like, please get this man off my fucking screen. I can't stand you. I hope you get help. Like, Louis also taps into his mind and sees like his own personal trauma being a human being, and the fact that I think he has a small dick, if I'm not mistaken, but also like that Santiago is not as big as he wanted to be, or he wants to portray himself, which does tie into my theory of like when I said earlier that I felt that Santiago really was just a big fucking facade. Like, Santiago this whole time, he loves being the center of attention and he loves being praised by anyone, but because he never got that when he was younger, and so to make up for his inabilities, he just became this performer. So glad he's dead. I'm so glad every single one of them in the Théâtre des Vampires is dead. They go to see Lestat, and Lestat is Lestat. Like, no matter how sad he is, I always feel like Lestat is just always looking out for himself, so I didn't really know how to feel when Lestat was there. They were about to burn him, and then Louis kisses Armand in front of him, which was a petty move, but like at this time it kind of made sense until we find out the final reveal. There's a script from that night, right? Only for Daniel to turn the page and to see that Armand is the one who wrote this whole entire script, not like Santiago. It was Armand, which means Armand was the one who sold everybody out. Not only did he do that, but he acted as if he didn't have a choice. No, he did have a choice. And he willingly decided to do this, and then he willingly cooperated, and then he willingly directed everything with Lestat there. Like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, this dude needs to go. He needs to fucking go. Louis, if you stay with this man, you and I are gonna fight. But anyway, thanks to Daniel having these documents, everything is exposed. And it wasn't Armand who saved Louis into banishment, it was actually Lestat. So this whole time, Lestat was actually just trying to save Louis' ass, even though they didn't try and save Claudia's ass hard enough. But anyways, he tried to save Louis' life, and it wasn't Armand, but he let Armand take the credit for it, which is crazy. And that's why he says, like, let's see how long this lasts. So my guy knew, but I don't know why he didn't decide to tell him, which doesn't really feel like a Lestat thing to do. But I don't know, maybe he just, I don't know. I actually don't know. But whatever, he let Louis and Armand be in this fucking delusional, dysfunctional relationship for the fucking 77 years or however the fuck they have been together. I'm so sorry I'm swearing so much. It's just like, I'm so angry. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was scared for Daniel's life. Like I knew Armand was gonna do something to him. But this is exactly what I mean in the finale, where you see Louis like throw Armand to a wall. Like, don't get me wrong, both of them are abusive towards one another emotionally. But I do notice that Louis has like very physical tendencies to be throwing people against the wall, to be physically violent with people, to be ripping out people's tongues out. And I'm just like, sir, get some anger management classes. Whole relationship that has existed for 70 something years has just crumbled with Daniel's presence, which I'm pretty sure is why Armand didn't want Daniel there in the first place. But look, bitch, here we are. Daniel releases the book finally. I'm just so happy he got the book out, because I was really scared that this was all for nothing. But then he doesn't leave completely unscathed, because Armand definitely turns him. You know what? I kind of feel bad for Daniel, because I wouldn't want to be turned at an old age. Like, he already had Parkinson's, so I wonder how that works biologically with him. I know he might be healed of it, but then he's turned in his old age, so I don't know how that feels. So, but anyways, yeah, he's a vampire now. One thing I do like about Daniel, and this is what I said earlier, like I feel like Daniel was Louis' own good friend, is that when they had that final scene of Daniel calling Louis and being like, have you read the book? And Louis like, not really, I was about to get into it. Like Louis and Daniel, I personally feel could be really good friends. I don't see them being companions, but I see them being really good friends. And I actually want that for Louis, because I feel like Daniel is the one person that keeps it real with Louis, doesn't like indulge him in his delulu, but actually keeps him grounded like an older brother. Especially because Louis has that brother wound. I really feel like that dynamic between them really works well, and I would love to see more of it next season. We get a final scene between Louis and Lestat where they apologize to one another, and honestly, I hope that for season 3 they don't get back together. I hope that the both of them could just look at one another and just be okay with being separate human beings. And I love that Louis can start living on his own and not be codependent on Lestat. Louis, like I said, is an extremely flawed character, and some moments I hate him, some moments I feel bad for him. Listen, Louis needs to stop being in relationships for a bit. He needs to take a Sabbath. He needs to go on a retreat. He needs to find himself, because he never had the opportunity for his own distinct personality. He went from being a pimp in New Orleans to, you know, trying to scrap for his family, to watching his brother die in front of him, to watching his family like literally, you know, isolate him because he became a vampire. Then he became Lestat's companion, but he didn't really have a personality. Not to mention that he had to change from all of that and also start feeding on humans, which is a big conflict for him. So he has like a bunch of layers of issues, and he definitely was a victim in certain ways, but as he becomes a vampire, this victim mentality becomes very much tedious and exhausting to listen to after a while, because yes, I understand you have so much trauma and you have to work through it at certain points. And of course, vampires are different, but still, like, I understand you have so much trauma, but like at a certain point, your excuse stops being an excuse. Do you know? And I really feel like with Louis, like, it just becomes so annoying after a while, and even I want to slap him through the screen. I really feel like Louis would do so much better just being by himself. And I'm happy that he finally got out of his codependent relationship with Armand. Like, I cannot stand Armand. Maybe in the books he's much better, and I'll read them, but fuck Armand throughout this whole entire show. And I love that he can finally kick Armand to the curb and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna be by myself for now. I really love that for him, because he needs to learn how to be alone. A lot of these vampires who have issues from their own like previous human life are literally living with those issues, and then they're like cohabitating and destroying everything in their midst. And I personally feel like if these people could just like learn to be by themselves and not be searching for companions all the time, things would be so much better for them, and be able to work through the loneliness, because that's what's also happening to Lestat. So Lestat, he's like this grand, like if he's like Narcissus in the person, definitely that would be the definition of Lestat. Like he's just so grand, everything's about him, like he's Lestat. But at the end of the day, Lestat is also dealing with that wound of being companionless. But because he's constantly looking for companionship, even though he's extremely lonely, and it's okay to feel lonely, but I feel like the extremes that these people go to try and satisfy their wants, their desires, their needs is so extreme. And with Lestat, like it comes to bite him in the ass every single time. Daniel, I'm very, very interested to see how the rest of the season takes his character, because now like he has daughters, now he has to, now he has to see his daughters grow older. And I mean, because he has been turned older, he can sort of get away with it now. But at the same time, I'm really interested to see like how his character development goes. Do him and Louis become besties? Like, I think they're already kind of friends, but do they become besties? Justice for Claudia and Madeline. Otherwise, you guys, those are all my thoughts on Interview with the Vampire. I wanted to make this long video so you guys can like sit down and enjoy my thoughts while watching the episodes, rather than me doing like short videos, because those also do get exhausting. I hope you guys like this type of video. I hope you guys are okay with seeing my face like all the time, I hope to have entertained you, and I hope that like my thoughts were concise on this, because so I will see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.
Oh my, oh my, oh my.